Welcome back to Chicago's Morning Answer. Amy Jacobson here, the one and only John Anthony from Black and Right Radio, sitting across from me. Thanks for coming in for a
thanks
second
for having
day.
me.
And are you having a repeat? What are you doing this Saturday?
Yeah, it's going to
that
be
would be tomorrow.
Best of.
A best of.
Mm-hmm.
All right, but normally he can be heard 4 to 7 p.m. every Saturday right here on AM 560 for a live show. When are you back in studio?
Well, January 6th is when I'm back on my J6 on my show, but I'll be filling in for Sean Thompson Thursday and Friday.
All right.
Yeah, can't wait.
Well, we can't wait to have our next guest on, returning guest. But I saw him on Sean Hannity the other night. That's Alderman Ray Lopez from the 15th Ward, and he is actually calling out Mayor Johnson for making comments like this, for blaming the wrong people. See, Mayor Johnson is pointing his finger in the wrong direction.
The issue is not just how we respond in the city of Chicago, it's the fact that we have a governor, an elected official in the state of Texas that is placing families on buses without shoes, cold, wet, tired, hungry, afraid, traumatized, and then they come to the city of Chicago where we have homelessness, we have mental health clinics that have been shut down and closed. You have people who are seeking employment. The governor of Texas needs to take a look in the mirror of the chaos that he is causing for this country. This is not just a Chicago dynamic. He is attacking our country.
Attacking our country. So let's welcome back to the program Alderman Lopez. Good morning, Alderman. How are you?
Amy, John, good morning and Merry Christmas to you both.
Thanks. So when I saw you on Hannity, you were saying that Mayor Johnson is pointing his finger in the wrong direction, and you're saying that he should be calling out President Biden and Kamala Harris because they are the reason for the problem.
Absolutely. That is 100% correct. Our mayor and a lot of our socialist colleagues here in the city of Chicago like pointing to Greg Abbott. And listen, I'm no fan of the Texas governor. I don't appreciate that he keeps making the border problem my backyard problem here in the city of Chicago. But the border problem is a federal failure. And who's in charge of the federal government but President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, who, by the way, he made his immigration and borders czar, who's never one step foot at Eagle Ridge, who's never one step foot at any of the encampments here in the city of Chicago, who doesn't even talk about this issue anymore. And yet you want to continuously point the fingers at the Texas governor while ignoring the fact that the New York governor, who's a Democrat, is doing the same thing, that Secretary Mayorkas from Homeland Security is assigning court cases to Chicago 10 years from now.
Right.
All of these people are culpable, but yet we're going to continue to play politics with immigration, which is what brought us to this point to begin with.
Yeah, but I have to take issue with what you just said because Governor Abbott, you think it's fair. So Eagle Ridge or Eagle Pass has 30,000 residents. They had 12,500 people come in. That's almost half of their city's population. They can't house these people. They can't. So they have to ship them to welcoming cities, and we are a welcoming city. And now that Governor Abbott, pardon?
Well, Amy, let me just say this. You wouldn't need welcoming city policies or sanctuary city policies if the federal government did its job and fixed the immigration policy in this country. If the president wasn't so focused on backdoor entrances and workarounds of a broken system, as opposed to fixing the front door and creating legal pathways for people to emigrate here in a legal and responsible way. What we're seeing is not just a mass migration out of Venezuela and South America. You have people from India, Pakistan, Nigeria, China, Afghanistan, all coming through the southern border because they see the giant loophole that exists in our system. And yes, it's not fair for the southern states to have to deal with this. But again, you cannot call them out for responding when it's the federal government and the head of that federal government, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, who are putting their heads in the sand to ignore the problem.
Right. Well, what do you think of now this Greg Abbott's new procedure of sending migrants on chartered planes here instead of buses?
Well, I don't know if Mayor Johnson is going to impound the planes because he's worried that his car might get booted with all the tickets that he's racked up.
Oh, yeah, we'll talk about that.
But I think that, again, we're missing the point here. And the point is that if you want the buses and the planes to stop in Chicago, then we as Democrats need to start calling out our Democratic leadership right now, as well as our members of Congress who keep calling for more workarounds and tell them to get in a room and start addressing the system in the same bipartisan way they did in 1986 with the Immigration and Reform Act that Ronald Reagan signed nearly 40 years ago.
Okay.
Well, let's talk about this 5-year-old kid that was killed in the migrant shelter.
Or he died.
He died.
Died.
Right.
Died.
Any update on that? What happened?
Yeah,
with
what
this?
you know?
You know, contrary to the mayor's narrative there, he wasn't sitting here cold and wet and looking for employment. He was here in our shelter system for over a month.
Wow.
So he's been our responsibility for well over a month. And what we know is that individuals, yes, are coming here sick, are coming here needing medical attention, and it's being made voluntary. They're not required to get routine vaccinations like every other American out of respect for the human dignity of the individual per this administration. But you're confining 2,400 people to live in a warehouse.
Oof.
Wow.
What are the odds that something is going to go wrong?
Right.
None of us should be surprised by that fact.
Right.
And the simple truth is this. You know, you have children who are going to CPS schools who aren't required to get immunization because we're treating them as housing as homeless individuals, so you don't require their immunization. You have all of these non-existent requirements being enforced in a system that's not paying attention, while $300 million is being thrown out the window to sustain these encampments.
Wow.
And what about this favorite healthcare staffing though? We've given them 94 million plus or something.
Sheesh.
It's called favorite healthcare staffing, and they're supposed to be taking care of the sick who are inside shelters. Somebody going to audit them?
No, they're not going to audit them. The mayor is required to provide us with information on a quarterly basis on what he's spending with regards to the migrant crisis. They refuse to do that. We're going on now 3 quarters with no reporting. And my colleagues, all of, especially the socialists, are more worried about freeing Palestine than worrying about what impact their sanctuary status is having on the migrants that have been shipped here and are forced to live in squalor, who are using their benefits given to them by the federal government to send money back to Venezuela while they're panhandling in their intersections.
Right. And Alderman Lopez, you have an opponent in this upcoming congressional race. I mean, what's been his take on all this? Has he even spoken out about this yet?
Well, finally,
the incumbent?
Yeah.
The incumbent,
No,
yeah.
the incumbent.
Chewy Garcia.
I said his opponent.
I'll say his name because
Yeah.
I have no problem saying it. No, Chewy Garcia is an open borders Democrat who would prefer to give everyone work visas who's used this who's manipulated the asylum process. He's completely forgotten about all the DACA kids who've been waiting for some sort of resolution. He's completely forgotten about his own people, the Mexican undocumented community, who've been hoping for some sort of path forward. And, to be honest, he spends more time in New York and LA than he does in the city of Chicago.
Yeah.
I don't count on him to do anything. And I think he forgot that he's a federal officer who could actually introduce a bill at any point to help correct this.
Amy,
Is his gangbanger son still living with him?
Oops.
What? He's a gangbanger. Is his son still living with him? That's a legitimate question.
It is.
Well, look at his record. I mean, he's
They came after
a
you,
gang
right?
member.
They came after you.
I think they're the ones who took over my Twitter account,
Yeah.
but that's all right. Or you don't have to answer that question. All right, let's move on to the park districts, because this is, we got our property tax bill, and a portion of our property taxes go to fund the park districts. Well, guess what, John Anthony? We can't get into our park districts because there's migrants there, and they've been there. And so you had a little stop, look, and listen because it's been 6 months, and here's one of your constituents.
No one here has been happy to see what's going on in our community. I see people smoking weed all the time. At my job, when I get off the pink line, I see a whole gang of them just smoking. And it's like, if you're really suffering through poverty, where are you getting money from to afford a weed?
And everybody has cell phones too, by the way. You can see them all on their cell phones.
And cars.
Oh, yeah. Where are they getting the cars, by the way?
So what they're doing is they're cashing out the benefits being provided to them to provide housing and food, and using that for other activities, or for sending it back to the homeland to help fund the next wave of migrant would-be asylum seekers coming to our country. What we learned at that meeting this week from the mayor's office was that thanks to the $65 million that Pritzker has come up with from the state of Illinois taxpayers, the city of Chicago is going to start looking at how to peel back use of the park districts But they gave no timeline for that. And to be perfectly honest, I don't believe that's ever going to happen at this point, because I think that as the buses and now airplanes continue to arrive in the city of Chicago, we're going to be inundated again. I have heard from some of my colleagues on the city council that they've been told by the mayor's team that we are at a breaking point now, that we can take no more migrants because we simply have no space for them. And when they are privately conceding that point, where do you think they're going to put the next wave that arrives?
Back in police stations, right? Back into the police stations.
And
wait, how much
before they're back in the police stations, back in the airports, and pretty soon in school gyms and gymnasiums and other locations, libraries, senior centers, you name it.
Yeah.
And that's what we
Yeah,
both have
how
the
much
same
money are
question.
they
We're like
getting?
chomping. How much money are they getting? Yeah.
You know, we heard various reports anywhere between $2,500 to $9,000. We can't get a clear estimate on that, but I think the fact of the matter that you're able to cash out whatever's on your debit card and then send that money elsewhere.
As a
should be
sitting
appalling to every
alderman.
American who has good sense, and
Wait.
that's not Chicago money; that's federal money.
Okay,
But still,
that makes sense then.
But 25 to 9,000 a month to each person we're giving them?
In total benefits of some variety, yes.
That's
Oh my
insane.
God. Well, that's why. Okay, so I have a family member who saw a busload of illegals in a big white van that said Garda World, and they were dropping them off at the Verizon store.
Phone.
And they were all getting phones.
Wow. Let's talk about Ed Burke.
Oh, yes.
Guilty.
Ed Burke. Guilty.
I saw your
guilty.
Twitter post about him.
Yes, former alderman found guilty of racketeering conspiracy charge, alleging he used the power of his elected office to squeeze developers for private law business. Madigan's next. Any other dirty alderman you want to let us know about?
Well, just keep in mind, we booted out the zoning committee chairman, socialist Carlos Ramirez Rosa, for threatening and squeezing his own coworkers on the city council. So that investigation is still going. We'll see where that gets us. We know that there are a lot of efforts being publicized by Alderman Conway about the arm twisting of the administration, withholding, public safety measures in an effort to get them to vote certain ways. So, the Chicago way, unfortunately, endures no matter who's in charge. The only way to truly stamp that out would be to, one, end all outside income and jobs for aldermen, which I've challenged the mayor to join me on. I've introduced it under 3 mayors, maybe the third time's the charm here. But I think also, you just have to elect individuals who you believe truly will not be tempted, and maybe even start looking at term limits as a way to ensure that, if you don't know when to find the exit, it'll statutorily be presented to you.
That is so true. Now, Brandon, the mayor is talking all this stuff about how, they need help and all this. But you guys tried to provide him help by allowing the citizens to determine if Chicago should be a sanctuary city. Why did that fail? Why? I mean, that's help.
And is
right?
there hope to bring it back on the ballot in March?
Yeah.
So I think the ballot initiative is dead at this point. But let me be clear about something. People like Governor Abbott are sending the would-be asylum seekers to Chicago because of our sanctuary city policy, to draw awareness to what's going on at the border. We know this. He's admitted it. And for the mayor and his cronies to say, our law has nothing to do with the situation, shows how bullheaded and stupid they are in this matter, completely oblivious to the facts that are before us. Now, undocumented and the asylum seekers are 2 different groups of people. We understand that also. But we know that right now, because of the Trust Act and because Governor Pritzker made Illinois the most welcoming state in the nation, no matter what Chicago does in terms of its welcoming city ordinance, undocumented individuals will be protected in Illinois, in Chicago, and in every municipality, town, and village throughout the state of Illinois.
Yeah.
But we are clinging to this law for the performance so that we can maintain the narrative of how evil other people across the aisle are in trying to demand border security. And Chicago residents and taxpayers are suffering because of it.
Well, one
The
correction.
mayor does not want to have a ballot initiative because he knows that 2/3 of this city would immediately vote it down tomorrow if it
Right.
was tomorrow, particularly African Americans and Latinos,
Yep.
which goes contrary to the narrative that they keep trying to push, which is that we're all just one big black and brown happy family. He has united the black and brown community against the policy that they are so determined to prevent the voters from having a say on that they will move heaven and earth and manipulate, extort, and even attack members of the city council to prevent that vote from happening.
Yeah,
It is shameful.
One correction. Governor Bruce Browner signed
yeah.
the sanctuary state bill into law, not Governor Pritzker. But
Actually, no. In 2021, Governor Pritzker upped it beyond what
Okay,
what
true.
Ronner did.
yeah, that's true. But you know what, Alderman Lopez, I believe in giving people their flowers. I mean, your fight, your stance, the positions you take, knowing that you're running against a very leftist. I applaud you, sir, and we need more people like you in the halls of City Hall of Chicago. We really do.
And hey,
I
if you
applaud
ever talk to Mayor Brandon Johnson, can you ask him to pay his bills? I mean, did you hear? You touched on it, but CWB, the city's issued seizure orders against 2 of Mayor Johnson's motorcade SUVs for failing to pay red light and speed camera tickets. He owes in penalties and fines $2,130.
Wow.
Are they going to really seize his motorcade?
Well, unfortunately for him and Stacey Davis Gates, neither one of them qualified for utility bill relief, so they're going to have to pay it themselves. But I highly doubt they're going to, impound the car. But I just had a senior citizen last night show up trying to get relief for a $24,000 water bill, and I hope they are as lenient with her as they will be with him.
I don't have an unpaid parking ticket. I can't imagine not paying my water bill to the tune of $3,000 plus he owed, and then some good Samaritan came forward and paid it for him. I mean,
Really?
it's water. And then he had outstanding parking tickets and speed camera tickets, and this before he became mayor, and those have to be paid off. And he had 1,000 plus or 1,500 in unpaid parking tickets and speed camera violations. So this, that his motorcade is doing, it doesn't.
I need
surprise
that
me,
good
but
Samaritan.
Who the hell does he and Stacey Gates think that they are? That they don't have to
Well,
pay their
sadly-
bills. She owed 5,000 plus.
Sadly, Amy and John, this is where we're at with the extreme left in Chicago that doesn't concern themselves with paying the bills. Right now, the mayor is wanting $1 billion loan so he could put affordable housing paid for and built by his cronies throughout the city of Chicago. Who do you think is going to pay for that? Are they concerned about the taxpayers if for a generation that are going to have to pay that bill, or the $3 billion that Lori borrowed 2 years ago for infrastructure, or the $66 billion that taxpayers are on the hook for as total debt by the city of Chicago?
Don't forget
When
the
do we
grocery
start
store.
those conversations?
And then don't even get me started on selective enrollment. Do you think that's going to come to fruition, or he'll be out of office before then? Because I know
No, they're pushing
CPS
that. They're
employees.
pushing that next year.
Well, I thought
pushing
it's
that
a
next year.
5-year plan to.
I'm sure they're going to try it sooner rather than later, because they're also trying right now next year at the January meeting to remove all police officers out of all schools,
Oh, come on.
regardless how local school councils have voted.
Oh,
That was the only power we had to keep our police in the school. So
Oh,
okay,
what can
well,
happen with that?
Democracy only works when it works in their favor.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like
That's
I'm
why they
living in a
use the word
communist
democracy.
country.
But that's why they
All
use
right,
democracy.
Alderman Lopez, 15th Ward Alderman, also running for the 4th congressional seat. And Merry Christmas. Thank you so much for always being accessible, and we really appreciate who you are and what you do.
I really